Hello and welcome back to the Villa Filler podcast. I'm here as always with my good friend Dan Wiseman. But we had to wait till the new week to do this one, mate. We could not bear to sit down and look each other in the eye and talk about what happened between Aston Villa and Arsenal. Aston Villa 2, Arsenal 4. Before we get into that, mate, how are you doing?
I'm good, mate. Yeah, the world didn't want us to get this one in the can, did it? So
No.
I went down, went out for a few drinks and stuff on the Saturday night. Probably a few too many drinks. Ended up because of said too many drinks, missed my train back up on the Sunday. So I came back up here too late. Been at work today, so it's just yeah, my mate. It's been a pretty whirlwind few hours, and it's been the same for you too. But yeah, maybe you're right in saying that uh, pouring a little bit of ice on it, fresh heads, um, might be better. I don't know. I'm still in two minds about it, mate.
Pouring some ice on you as well, mate. Hope
Yes,
that hangover's all good.
yes, yeah.
That's the important thing. But I think one thing that I did want to just before we even talk about the game and the football inside of things, I'm sure you'd have seen it, mate. They by the Aston
Yeah.
Villa Football Club allowed AFTV, aka Arsenal Fan TV, to go and shoot their preview in Villa Park. I am lost for words. I am totally and utterly. I feel betrayed. Listen, like the club just do not like fan media, and that is like that's a fine stance to take, right? And I know for a fact that the club don't like us because we years ago we had we'd agreed to shoot with Brian Little. Some people, if you've been around for a long time, you'd have seen this interview that we did with Brian Little. Um, and Brian agreed to do it, and Brian got us in at Villa Park and all this kind of stuff. And it didn't go through the club. And Brian was like, "Oh, I'll give the head of media your number, so you can sort of discuss it." But obviously, I never got a call or a text from him. We ended up sitting on that for ages. And then I think what compounded that feeling, because we sat on it because we was like, this is probably the right thing to do. The Villa View literally like had an interview with Brian at the same time as us. Like Brian, when we went and did the interview, Brian was like, "Oh yeah, I had the Villa View do this the other day," which is like that's fine. But because we were holding, because we was waiting for communication from the media team, which never came, they beat us to posting the interview. So that was really, really poor from Villa. And we've emailed them a few times asking for like access and asking if we could ever work, and it's always been a hard no. Which is fine if that's the stance the club are going to take. But clearly, mate, they're they're willing to allow Don Robbie to stand in the way
Yeah.
and to preview the game, and it's like, oh, man, like throw us a bone. Do you know what I mean? Like we're all we're all trying to sort of communicate the same thing. We love this football club, and I think it's difficult because obviously, to play devil's advocate and to argue both sides, the club have it's within their best interest to protect the players, and obviously being a fan channel and talking about players, there are players that we talk about that not we don't necessarily like, but obviously we criticize, and the club don't want to be associated with that. So it's a really difficult position, but it's really disheartening, mate, because it's like
Yep.
like we do this in our own time at our own expense, even more so now because ads have been turned off. They should be back soon though. Um, and it's all with the sort of, we do it because we love it and we love having this chat with you guys and all of this kind of stuff. But like, it'd be nice as part of the end goal to have to be able to do something with the club because we've put so much of our time and money, not only just supporting it, but creating content around it. Do you know, it's really frustrating,
Yeah.
isn't it, mate? It's really
Yeah, no,
disappointing.
it's tough, mate. It's tough, especially when, you see that video Ty afterwards, like dancing around and saying he hopes Villa get relegated. It's like you sold your soul for what? Yeah, it's frustrating, mate. Honestly, I do genuinely understand the club that wanted to side by like fan-led accounts because when the going's not so good and we're openly critical of the club and senior figures at the club, obviously they can't be seen to be endorsing But however right we may be in certain
Yeah,
situations, they can't be seen to endorsing that, and that is honestly fine. Like from a PR point of view, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare because you don't know what's going to happen in the next game. You don't know what these accounts which you've been associated with are going to turn around and say. And so, yeah, it's a whole nightmare. I do genuinely understand it. But then to see Arsenal TV do it, who like obviously we lost, but if we did get a good win out of that, would give you some like some bile in the post match or something like that. It's weird, mate. It's weird, but no, like it's one of those where by the fans for the fans, we do it for you, like the
yeah.
audience more than the club.
That's
And it
nice.
like my experience was like at Villa Park was amazing. Like I feel like 3 or 4 people came up to me and was like, "Oh, I love the channel. Like, keep
Yeah,
doing the pod." Yeah, it was really nice, mate. I've got to give a shout out to Tom. He spoke. I grabbed me in the half time in the whole thing to say that he watches and everything like that. And I promised him a shout out to Tom. I need to get better at what I say because it's still so surreal for me for like someone to be like notice me and be like, "Oh, mate, love the podcast." I'm
love
always just
that.
like, "Oh, yeah, thank." Bye. I
Yeah,
never know what to say. So I need to get better at asking for people's names, like, and then I can be like, right, I'll give you a mention on the podcast. By the 4th time this had happened, I finally managed to get my head around this. And so, Tom, shout out to you, mate. Thanks for the
mate,
support.
that's brilliant. That's so cool. Honestly,
It
that's
is,
great.
mate. It
It's
is. Yeah.
the last time it's been a few months since it happened to me, but it was the same sort of awkward circumstances where it was actually after the game, and I was talking to friend of the podcast Dan Horton. Shout out to Dan. Because he was sat a few rows in front of me, and like as people were sort of piling out, somebody just shouted, "It's you!" And I was like, I looked around because you would like this isn't
Yeah,
a
yeah.
regular thing. And there was like, it's you from the podcast. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, oh, what's
That's
it called
amazing.
again? Which is like slightly humbling as well. But do you know what's it's worse when people recognize you but they don't. So like I can't remember if I mentioned it, but Spurs away, um, there was a great group of lads who was sat in front of us. We had a great time, and one of the lads turned around and was like, "Oh, you do a podcast, don't you?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, yeah." And I was just trying to like sort of keep it low key because I just didn't. It's awkward. Do you know what I mean? Like it's very nice that people listen to the podcast but we're just regular people. Um, and then they were like, "Oh yeah, I think I've seen that," and it's like you haven't. It's very nice, but if you think you saw it, maybe you didn't, and that's fine. But they were very nice about it, and they were very they were good. They were good fun in the crowd as well. Um, Mate, do we start with the positives or the negatives on this game?
Uh,
Because I mean, there are a few positives, you know,
there are. No,
in
there's definitely
isolation.
are. That's why it's so annoying, is because there's so many positives, right? It's like that's why it's hard to take. It's because we did so many bloody things well, but in the end we did a Villa and bottled it. So yeah, you're right. That's why it's frustrating. Is because it's not like a normal defeat where there's just negatives. Like there's actually loads of things that I thought we did quite well.
It, you're not wrong, mate. You're not wrong. And it's, we're looking at now 11 goals conceded in 3 games. We'll start with the negatives. Why not? I want to end the podcast on a better note than we start. And
Yep,
it's seen
I
as we've
like
just
that.
ranted about fan media anyway. Let's go. Let's go. Um, Mate, it's just Emi Martinez. There's been a
Yeah.
lot of conversation about this, and I can't help but feel myself that it is somewhat reactionary. Obviously, it's not a good look to be conceding 11 goals in 3 games. But I think for me, the biggest complaint, the biggest issue, the biggest pet peeve is, we've struggled. The Leicester game showed just how difficult we are probably finding it to play out from the back. And the instructions must have changed because Emmy was trying to play a sort of a chipped ball out to Alex Moreno all the time, and it just didn't work. And I can understand trying to find different ways of beating the press and to sort of prevent that press, delay that by 5 or 6 seconds by putting it somewhere different. But Emi Martinez had a 46% pass accuracy against Arsenal. That is an absolute disgrace. There is I would forgive Emi Buendia's pass accuracy for being that poor in a game because he's trying to create something. But the goalkeeper, when it's his job to be playing out from the back, to have a pass completion rate under 50%,
Yeah.
that's less than one of every two passes were accurate, or more than one. It's unacceptable. That is genuinely. And listen, Emi's never been good with his feet, has he? It's never been. That wasn't the reason he was brought here. That was never how the goalkeepers were asked to play under Dean Smith when he signed. But that's criminal, mate. That is really bad.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a very interesting one because no, like he's not a goalkeeper that's known for his distribution, but I mean, he's a footballer, right? He's a
Yeah.
footballer. He's got to be able. I know he can do this. I know that he can do this. But yeah, it was a little bit poor. I think some of the reaction is a little bit over the top. Like some of the stuff I've seen, it's like all of a sudden, like it's like people are acting like we've hated Emi Martinez for ages, and it's like, oh yeah, he's finally gone too far. His ego's too big, and it's all of this sort of stuff. And it's like, no, like I understand why people got frustrated with the time wasting and everything like that, but it's very similar to what I was saying about Grealish the other week. It's like, look, we can't be like watching him away at the World Cup be sort of a master shithouse and be like, Emi,
Yeah.
my guy, my keeper, love it. And then he brings it back to Villa Park, and we're like, his ego's too big. I don't like it. It's like, and it's like, well, you have to pick a side. It was hilarious in the penalty shootouts at the World Cup, but like you want that, like that's who we praised him for being at the World Cup. Like when he brings that back to Villa Park, like we can't always you know what I mean? The one thing I will say is that he needs to find the line. That's what I'll say. Because he gets booked all the time. He gets booked for time wasting all the time. And sooner or later, this is going to lead to a suspension. And then we're really in the shit. Because like we're back to that whole Robin Olsen thing again, which was the very problem in the first place.
Yeah.
So it's like he got booked again against Arsenal for time wasting, and it's not the first time that's happened this season. And it's like if he's not careful, that's going to be 4 or 5 yellow cards, all for no real reason as well. That's what's frustrating. All for no real reason. But he's still, I put out that tweet from the account saying he's like criticism is fine. But let's still not forget that this guy is the best goalkeeper we've had this century. And like the replies were hilarious, mate. They were like, and I get it, Brad Friedel was a good goalkeeper, but he was like 41. And it's like, I was like, no. Friedel was better than Martinez. And it was like, not on your Nelly. Is Brad Friedel a better goal? I grew up watching Brad Friedel. He was like the first good goalkeeper that we had. Like, I remember bits of Thomas Sorensen. People said like Peter Schmeichel, but again, I think he was like of the same age.
Count.
Like,
you can't have that.
Let's have it right. He's the best goalkeeper we've had this century, objectively, the only other World Cup winner in this club's history. And it was like, mate, one of the replies was like, oh yeah, Jimmy Rimmer was better. Mate, Jimmy Rimmer stopped playing for Villa in like 1983. I can't be doing this. So no, Emi needs to find the line. He's still an exceptional goalkeeper, still the best goalkeeper I've seen pull on the carrot and blue in my lifetime. The shithousery is part and parcel of that. We can't love it for Argentina and then pick him out on it when he plays for Villa, but he needs to get better at towing the line, and I'll draw a line under it there.
But what's annoying is I can't remember who the referee was now, and nor do I wish to, if I'm being completely honest. After a very poor fortnight of officiating in the Premier League, from minute one, the referee was on Emi for time wasting, which is fair enough. That is his job. I can't lambast him for doing his job. But what I can lambast him for is when he's not doing his job and he's not stopping Arsenal from taking the exact same amount of time, if not longer, to take throw-ins. There was a throw-in that took genuinely a minute for them to take. And there's that same energy wasn't reciprocated for other events of time wasting throughout this game, which really bothered me. There's so many inconsistencies with the officiating, and it's an absolute joke. And while we're on the officiating and on the subject of Emi Martinez, that own goal, there's no way that goal can stand. I've read the rules. You guys all know the rules. If a goalkeeper, if his vision is being blocked, and as well, the two players are offside in any case, the goal cannot stand. Now, there is a argument that the linesman tell that his view is being obstructed? Perhaps not. We've seen it side on, and there is definitely an argument to be made for the goal standing. But that view from the camera behind the goal, behind Emmy, you can see both of the Arsenal players are unequivocally blocking his view. And it's incredibly frustrating because Villa concede that goal. That's the third goal. That's the nail in the coffin, right? I think what is really important, I think, to mention about this game is it was won and lost on fine margins. Aston Villa had the first half, absolutely, but Arsenal came out all guns blazing in the second half. Odegaard misses an open goal. They've hit the bar 5 minutes before that as well. And the momentum very much was in Arsenal's favour. The moment Zinchenko scores that goal, which is an absolute disgrace, Stevenage goal all over again. Mark your fucking men, boys. The momentum, it shifts. And I think, again, to reiterate the point about fine margins, Leon Bailey hits the crossbar. Okay. Now, Leon Bailey did not have a very good appearance whatsoever, in my opinion. It definitely wasn't one of his better appearances off the bench. But that chance that he hits off the bar, where he very much had the better of Aaron Ramsdale, if that goes in, it's 3-1 and it's game over. And that's what's incredibly frustrating about this game, because we don't then, maybe we do concede at the corner, but it kills Arsenal. That's the main point. The mentality to go 2 goals down, they'd have to have scored 3 goals at that point to have won the game. That just isn't happening, especially with how well we managed the first half. And it's so, and that's not to excuse the downfall or the performances at all, but it's just it's a bit of context, really, isn't it? To it, mate. It's just annoying that Leon can't finish that chance.
Yeah, well, that's the first thing I said when I walked out the stadium. Is look, like, it's annoying. Okay, 90+3 and 90+8. That's when we've conceded. But Odegaard should have wrapped it up. It's like that chance where he puts it wide. That should have been game. That, like, it's irrelevant. And it's like the one thing I would say on the offside, and I'm literally just playing devil's advocate here, is it because it's not a shot on target, because it's not going in. So it's like, once it rebounds off the crossbar, hits Emmy and goes in. Obviously, it's an own goal. Like, if it hits the woodwork, it's one of them weird things in football. It's not a shot on target. That was the only thing I was wondering. Is it's like, does that? I know that counts for if the ball then flies into the net, but because it technically didn't, it's a shot off target. And then it hits Emmy in the back. I don't know. That's all.
But like, I appreciate.
I agree, it's flawed.
But
I agree,
it's
flawed.
Like, how can? Because if you're gonna that's like saying, like, should Emmy's gonna have to? It's 50-50 as to whether a shot's going to be on target or off target. So how does he decide to prepare or not prepare? Do you know? Like, that's a completely ridiculous ruling. It's a load of crap, mate. Honestly, it's shocking. And
mate, you're right.
It's right, mate. This is what bothers me. It's a simple game. Let's keep it simple. Let's not overcomplicate it with these kind of rules. It's ridiculous. I thought I was going to be calm. I thought this was calm. It's quite clearly not going to be. We clearly feel the same.
Yeah, no, mate. That's it.
You're right.
That's all I was. It's just one of those crazy rules. I was like, oh, maybe it's a thing where, like, because it's technically a shot on target, like, it hasn't gone in off the back of Jorginho. It's gone on off, like, because of Emmy's, like, and it's just like. But anyway, it's irrelevant. It's an absolute. I mean, that's how you win. That's how my first reaction when I saw that was, that's how you win league titles. Is because we've seen United come to Villa Park and win it 90+. We've seen Man City come to Villa Park and win it 90, like Chelsea. All the guys that have been winning Premier League titles, we've all seen them come to Villa and do that late on in the game at the death, somehow claw themselves into it. And I was like, that's how you win. That's how you win league titles.
Are they going to win it though? I don't think they are.
No, not necessarily.
Not now.
But I was like,
I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. I'm just throwing that out.
That's the kind of, like, that's the kind of win when you're not playing well, win when there seems no way. That kind of was like, proves that they have got the minerals to go and do it. But yeah, I mean, look, on the general performance, Emmy was poor. Ollie is looking amazing. The one thing I'm most annoyed at this game is it robbed us of a Coutinho winner, which would have just been amazing. It's a wonderful goal, and honestly, I don't think there's a player in the Villa squad that I want to see score more in that starting 11 than Phil, because what it got, like, you saw how much it means to him, and it was such a good goal, and it was like everything. I think Villa Park unanimously was delighted to see Phil put that away. Ollie's 4-4. No Villa players ever scored 5 in a row in the Premier League, so he could do some amazing things at Goodison, make history for all the right reasons. Not, I still don't really like what we're doing with Guinea. I feel like he just plays a really nothingy role. I don't really feel like we're getting the best out of him. But yeah, I mean, on the whole, I should also want to deliver a really good point on Twitter, actually, and I'd love to be able to credit them, but I'm useless. And they said the difference is that Villa have a really talented squad, but within this squad, we have players capable of achieving incredible highs, but also incredible lows. So, and I think our centre backs are an incredible example of that, whereby Mings and Konsa can be amazing. They can be amazing, one of the better centre back partnerships in the league, but both of them are entirely capable of being awful and doing what Konsa did when Odegaard almost scored. And that's the difference between our squad and a squad like Arsenal's, whereby that range in which they're capable of performing is much smaller. So they're capable of being brilliant, but on the worst day possible, you're going to get an average performance. Whereas these Villa players, like Leon's capable of being a world beater, but on the days where he's not at it, he's an outright stinker and it affects everybody else. And I think that level of finding consistency game to game is ultimately what separates you from the top teams.
Yeah, you're not wrong, mate. You're not wrong. And it's like, it's taking your chances as they come as well. And that's where you do have to give Ollie the credit. As you say, mate, 4-4 is absolutely phenomenal. Only had one shot, managed to score the goal, though, with his left foot. And the XG for that chance alone was 0.10. Absolutely crazy. I figured out the XG for the goals that he scored in the past 4 games as well, mate. So he's scored 4 goals from an expected goals tally of 1.61. That's just crazy, man. Like, we have to give him his flowers. He's doing so good right now. And I do feel like, I mean, you guys will know, I love Danny Ings. We're the leaders of the Danny Ings Appreciation Society right here. This podcast is a Danny Ings dedicated podcast, but I think him leaving has actually, it's given Ollie the confidence and the reassurance because he's the guy. And I think we was all worried leaving us a bit light and we didn't necessarily know how big John Jada would do, but he is relishing in that. And, I say that knocking on wood. I hope he doesn't get himself injured because God knows where we'd be without the goals that he scored in the past 4 games. But shout out to Ollie Watkins, man. He's doing the most. He really is. Listen, I know, like I said earlier, the game was on a knife edge, this and that. Leon scores and it's a different game. I think Emery's comments at full time, however, would remain the same. Obviously, aside from the whole Emmy coming up for the corner thing, which I think is something that does need to be discussed. Personally, I don't have an issue with it, right? Because at that point, we had still given Arsenal a right good going. And there is, with 5 minutes left, there's every chance that you can go and score. And on the flip side of that, you're already losing. So what do you have to lose by sticking your goalkeeper up there, aside from the humiliation of going and conceding the 4th goal in the manner that we did? My only complaint about that is Kashi. You've got to get closer to Vieira, and somebody, whether it's him, whoever, you've got to take the red card. You absolutely have to take a man out there. There is no way you can let him walk it in. You've got to go Fede Valverde in the Super Cup final, where he just absolutely hacked. Was it Griezmann? I think it was Griezmann. You just flying in, leg breaking challenge, whatever. You do whatever to stop them scoring there, because that's your honor, that's your integrity right there. Do you know what I mean? Like we've put it all on red and it's landed on black. So you have to somehow you have to salvage some pride from that. And maybe that's just my outlook and how I would have played it. I know I would have just absolutely booted the living hell out of Fabio Vieira and put him in Rosette.
It's difficult, mate. It's really difficult. The relationship between Unai and Emmy is really interesting. It's really interesting. For Unai, I consider to be a very level-headed man. I found that in his press conferences, he's always very reasonable, very level-headed, always remains very polite, no matter the result. Like, you can see that he's, like, the emotions change. He's obviously very disappointed, but he's never disrespectful or anything like this. But for him to out Emi Martinez for what I believe is the second time, because I think there was a weird thing after the World Cup final before he was back where he was sort of commenting on his penalty antics, didn't he? And I swear he said something like, "Oh yeah, I'll be speaking to him when he gets back," or something like that. So it was something along those lines.
Yeah, I think that can be taken in many ways, but I know what you're saying. Yeah,
100%, 100%.
yeah,
I agree. But this one is more like it's more clean cut. And it's again like it's really interesting to see because there were these reports initially when Unai came in that he wasn't a fan of Martinez. Remember the newspaper, and we rubbished them quickly on the podcast. We got linked to like Yassine Bounou from Sevilla. We rubbished them, rightly so. And then that comment happened after the World Cup like final, and then this one has happened now, and it's like this is interesting, and it's a saga I'm really looking to like keen to see develop and keen to see how this plays out because it's getting increasingly hard to argue that everything is all right between the two. And I just really don't think it's like Unai to dig people out because like other players
yeah.
made mistakes in this game. Like Ezri almost cost us a goal with that Odegaard chance, and like Leon didn't play particularly well and stuff like this. But I've never seen it. Like I think Emmy's the only player who's come out. Like even after Stevenage, he didn't come out and out like any players. Managers don't really do that nowadays. So for him to speak on Emmy in the way that he did is interesting.
Yeah, I've got the transcript up here, mate, for those who maybe didn't see or listen on the radio. I'm frustrated, but I know our work is here. It's taking time, being demanding, doing mistakes, and learning from our mistakes. Something I've never told my goalkeeper to do is go and score one in the 92nd minute because maybe I don't know what the data is, but maybe it's one goal out of 100 that keepers score from corners, and maybe 20 times the opposition are doing the transition, and 10 times they will score. And today it happened. For me, it's not really being smart. It's not really being consistent in how we want to play and how we want to compete. It's pretty scathing. It is pretty
It's not
scathing.
good.
I think as well, like I don't want to sort of stroke the embers of this alleged beef because, there has been many an occasion when he's said what a wonderful goalkeeper Emmy is and how much he does love him.
Yep.
There was reports that there was, I mean, the whole Aston Villa fan base lost their mind when Neil Cutler lost his job. But there were reports that kind of emerged that sort of coincided with that suggested that Emmy didn't really necessarily get along with the goalkeeping staff that Unai had brought in. And like, listen, I don't want to sit here and be flippant because I literally worship the ground that Emmy walks on. I would take a bullet for Emmy Martinez. I think he's magnificent. Again, that's not to say that I have never criticised him because I think the one thing I've always maintained is the man cannot pass. And that is, especially after this game, starting to become a lot more of a problem. And I think, there's so many people on social media saying, can't believe how many people are willing to sell Emmy after that game, this, that, blah, blah, blah. It's not that. It's that. I think he's gone in the summer regardless of what we think or what Unai thinks. Because there's when's the next time you're going to be able to command like 60, 70, 80 million pounds for your World Cup winning goalkeeper?
And for him,
it's literally
it's a golden window.
That window is so finite.
His stock has never been higher on a personal level. Like football is, and if Villa go and have a poor season, then this window of opportunity whereby a Juventus or an Atleti or someone like that can come in for him, it can go like that. And so for him, like if he wants to go and achieve that, which he's more than entitled to, it just seems to have lined up at the right time, I think.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong, mate. I don't think you're wrong. It's a sad reality that we may have to accept. Then again, on the flip side, who would pay that much money? I don't think there are many clubs that have the resource that we maybe demand because we're not in a position where we have to sell, but we're in a position. If clubs come in and start offering some serious money, and we can double or maybe even triple what we've paid for him, then the club would be silly not to entertain that. And as you say, Bounou, I mean, Pickford's another one whose name is always sort of floating around as well. There are goalkeepers that you can go out and get. And again, I don't want to, as I say, I don't mean to stroke the embers of this because I at least want to believe that there is no serious issue with these guys. And hopefully that is the top and bottom of it. And hopefully, we've got Everton on Saturday, and hopefully that is a win and a clean sheet because I predicted before this that we're winning 3 games that we'd get 3 points, And it's all I'm all on this Everton game now. This is the only opportunity to get 3 points, mate.
Am I right in saying it's the last ever trip to Goodison?
It
Am I right
might
in saying
be.
that? Am I right in
It.
saying that?
I hope
Correct me
it
in the
is because that
comments, but
away end is awful.
I have in my head this is their last season at Goodison, which would
Is
make it our last.
is it?
Maybe I'm wrong.
I
Someone
don't know.
correct me
I
in the
don't know.
comments.
Yeah, I
I
know the
literally
stadium's
just
nearly
thought of it
built.
then. I was like, oh, going to Goodison. So I was like, wait, will we do that many more times? So maybe like if it's not our last, maybe it'll be like the penultimate. Like so, it's a big game.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely, a lot of history in that ground for us and Everton, obviously. Um, we'll be back in a few days to preview that one. But yeah, I just hope a convincing win against a very, very hard to beat Sean Dyche team would certainly put to rest a lot of the feelings that I think the fan base are encountering right now. Um, so yeah, hopefully we can. This is a bookend, and we can score some more goals and win some games, and keep some clean sheets, and keep Emmy's name out of the papers because that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, guys, if you enjoyed, let us know by hitting a like, commenting your thoughts below, and subscribing to the channel. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, make sure you leave a review and that you follow us and a 5-star rating. They're all very helpful. And if you guys didn't know, we're on TikTok and Instagram. It's at VillaFillaPod on TikTok. No, on Instagram, at VillaFillaPod on Instagram and at Heart of the Hole on TikTok. So some nice growth on TikTok recently, mate. I think we're about to hit 500
Yes.
followers. So
Yep.
nice and steady. We're almost at 100 followers on Instagram. Man, growing Instagram accounts is so much harder than it used to be. I hate it. I absolutely hate it. So guys, follow it. The link's in the description. You help us out more than you would realize. So yeah, like, comment, subscribe.